Welcome to the spagirlspodcast, the self-publishing podcast for authors. You're in the right place for the best writing, marketing, and publishing advice, plus interviews with industry experts and best-selling authors. I'm Cheryl Phipps.
I'm Shao Barrett.
I'm Wendy Vella.
And I'm Trudy J. And this week we have the delightful Alexa Rivers here with us, New Zealand.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, Alexa.
Hello. Another Kiwi. Yay.
Yay.
Nice to be here.
Yeah, awesome to have you. Now
Again. Actually.
Well, I was just about to say that. We had her last in January 2021. So it'll be really interesting catching up with you, what you've done since then and how that's all going, because we talked to you about character-centric plotting. So I'm curious to know if you still use that technique or how that all works. But first, before we delve into the interview, I'm going to read the bio for you and people can hear how awesome you are. Alexa Rivers writes about genuine characters living in messy, imperfect lives and earning hard-won happily ever afters. Most of her books are set in small towns, and she lives in one of those herself. She shares a house with a neurotic dog and a husband who thinks he's hilarious. Don't they all think they're hilarious?
Yeah,
Isn't that
it's just a thing, you know?
When she's not writing, she enjoys traveling, baking, eating too much chocolate, cuddling fluffy animals, drinking excessive amounts of tea, and absorbing herself in fictional worlds. That sounds awesome.
Here's the tea.
We all like. So welcome.
Thank
now,
you.
Alexa, so what have you been doing since last we talked? Tell us.
Oh, a whole lot, I think. I think one of the things I talked about in that last session was leaving my day job, which I did, I think, in 2022. So I've been writing full-time since then, which has been really amazing. And I've probably written a few books since then too.
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
Sounds like it. So I think you only had 9, didn't you? And now you've got close to 32 or something.
Yeah.
Pretty impressive in that,
So
in
just
that space
just
of
a
time.
couple. Yeah, just a couple of books in the meantime. And do you still plot in the same way? That's my question.
More or less. I use the same framework. I've added in a few bits to try and fill in some of the middle gaps a bit. Mostly just kind of trying to frame in where there should be little, turning points or plot twists or something, because otherwise those middle bits can be a bit carry on a bit. But other than that, same framework.
Yeah, that's cool. Did you go, sorry to completely derail the conversation, did you go to Rachel Bailey's Saggy Middles talk
I did.
at our recent conference? I found that really, really good. And we're going to get Rachel on, I think, to talk about that, because I was like, wow, this is genius. Like, I've always felt like you about the middles, like they sort of drag on a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
And she just completely changed how I saw it. Yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, that was
So
really
just
good.
for those listening, Rachel Bailey came to the Romance Writers of New Zealand conference.
And she's
And we've had
Just
Rachel.
attended recently.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry to completely derail. I'll get us back on track now. So I've known Alexa for a while now, and you've been doing TikTok recently, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to get you on. So I know that you started TikTok a while ago and didn't really have much success initially, but something changed in November last year. So can you talk us through what that was and how that worked?
Yeah, I started TikTok, it must have been in 2022, I think, and I had a couple do all right, the page flip videos when they were really popular. And yeah, they did all right, but then it kind of died right off again. And it must have been, I think, October last year, I did Kate Hall's course. So you had her on in the last few months, I think.
Yep.
And I had, like, straight away, there was like an awesome turnaround on my accounts there. And had really good ends of November, December, January were really good with me from the TikTok videos. Some of them just really took off. It's funny, some of the books that really take off aren't necessarily the ones you expect, or they're inconveniently not the first in the series, but but it doesn't seem to matter for the readers there.
That's really interesting. So why do you think those ones took off? Was there something in particular?
I don't know if it's just
books?
the ones that have the most like emotional punch moments, or the kind of like shock factor or something like that. The shock factor seems to do quite well there. All those moments where you kind of want to slap one of the characters. But yeah, that's it's been really interesting. It was really good at the end of last year, and then it took a bit of a dip this year, and it's kind of up and down, but it's still generally where I get a lot of my sales from, I think.
Do you how much time each week do you spend on TikTok?
I put in about an hour a day in the calendar for making them. So I make most of my TikToks on Canva, and then I'll kind of schedule them one afternoon and then post them the next morning.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
And how
cool.
many accounts do you have?
A lot. But I actively use maybe 4 or 5, keeping in mind I have a couple of accounts for pen names that only have 1 or 2 books that were passion projects, and I post on those occasionally. So I probably have 2 or 3 that I post on regularly for my main pen names.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
And
Did we discuss the genre of your book? Sorry if we
Yes.
did.
So my books are mostly small town romance, and I have some small town romantic suspense. And then I write as A Rivers, and I have sports romance and romantic suspense under that. And I have, like I said, a couple of pen names for one-off passion projects. One of those came out this year, and that was a Regency book. And I have a TikTok account for that as well. I wasn't sure how that would go, but it's done better than I expected.
There you go. So I think a lot of us, including myself, had the assumption that TikTok was very much for sort of younger readers and maybe, you know, contemporary sort of steamy stuff. So that's really interesting to hear that it's working for that too. Just a question, and so this will be really, I think, valid for people that are living outside the US, of which obviously we do, is having success on TikTok without being in the US, basically, without having that US address where you're posting it from, not address, you know,
IP
address.
connection, that's the one I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, brain is not working. Could you just talk around that a little bit, Alexa, just how you get around that?
Yep. So when I had my first couple of big months at the end of last year, I was doing it from my normal cell phone, which has, I assume, in New Zealand IP address or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, a couple of my more popular accounts, one, even though, you know, I've never done anything to send it to US addresses, seems to go mostly to US people.
Oh, okay.
I think that might be because I mostly followed and interacted with US-based accounts unintentionally at the beginning, so I set it up for that. I'm not 100% sure that's what happened there, but I think it is, because I've heard that interacting with those mostly US-based accounts can work in that way. But I also have another account that's mostly Australia and UK readers that also does reasonably well and sells books. So I also think it doesn't have to be just going to the US audience to, I mean, it's the bigger market, but it doesn't have to be the only place you go.
I
you
think
haven't
that's
done the
really
whole
good.
thing where you've gone out and tried to get a US SIM card.
Yes.
Oh, you
Yeah.
have. So you
I have
both.
another phone.
Okay.
This is my TikTok only phone. And that has a US SIM. And I use some of the accounts I use are on that, and some of the accounts I use are on my other phone. But honestly, I don't know that it's done a heap of difference in terms of how they perform. I have some accounts that do fine on both, and yeah, I haven't
It's
noticed.
so interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Good to have that comparison though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we often
So
told one
obviously-
way.
Yeah. Obviously set one up under Alexa Rivers. And then, so what other did you use different names for the other accounts?
So I have an Alexa Rivers author account and an Alexa Rivers books account, which are both kind of affiliated with me. And then I have a couple of accounts that are kind of shadow accounts that are like just generic book titles, like Steamy Romance Reads
Yeah.
or something like that.
Nice.
But those weren't started through your name. They were started in
No.
separate accounts. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
And
cool.
so you spend an hour a day. Are you doing the a variety of different types of posts, or are you doing them just in the Kate Hall kind of?
I do I do slideshows because I tried my face early on, and the face videos never got any views or likes. So I think
don't know
removed them
why.
now.
You're such a pretty thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. I decided every time I saw them, it made me cringe. So I ended up taking them all down in the end anyway.
Yeah.
I figured if they weren't selling the books, there was no point in having them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair call.
I do slideshows under my author kind of name ones, mostly kind of black and white slideshows that are kind of, I try to go longer, but some of them are kind of 8 to 10. Most of mine are probably kind of 15 to 20 slides. And then I have a couple like, I've got an ice hockey sports romance that came out recently, and the background for that's just, like ice
Yeah.
on
Nice.
every slide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have one account where I've been testing doing kind of 2 slideshows with like a hook and then an excerpt from the book, like a
I've seen that.
screenshot with some
Yeah,
of the
quite a
highlighting
lot.
on it.
Yeah.
And that's been doing all right, not like spectacularly well, but well enough to keep up, and it's a lot less work as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I've seen those. They seem to have just started up lately, haven't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did you train your account? Because you must have had to go into your account if you were posting originally before you did the course. You must have had a lot of content in there. So how did you go back in and start? Did you start from scratch all over again?
Well, luckily it had kind of been sitting there for long enough that I think it had kind of forgotten a lot of what I taught it the first time around.
Yeah.
But I did probably a few days where I just went in and I'd looked up keywords in the search and I tried to find the slideshows, but I don't know if that was just at the time, but it was quite hard to find them in the search bar a lot of the time. So once I'd found an account that looked like the kind of books that I write, I'd just, go through and watch a heap of them.
Yeah.
And then go and, basically I spent a few days going through as many slideshows as I could find.
Yeah.
Just retraining.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of, people say that's what you need to
And
do.
I
to
still
get the
keep
right
that up a bit.
audience.
Like when I post, I'll look at 3 slideshows beforehand. I'm pretty good. They come up on my For You page now. And then after I post, I'll look through another 3 just to keep it going.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
good. Yeah.
where do people go to find you? Do you have a link tree that they go to in your profile, or do they just go to Amazon and find you?
Yeah, no, they seem to go just straight to Amazon.
Right.
I've been noticing since I've been on TikTok, a lot of more of my sales have been from Amazon, whereas I was kind of almost 50-50 or kind of 2/3 wide retailers before, but it's more kind of at 80-90% Amazon now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you are wide. That's something we should have established earlier.
Some of I've been testing, I put one series in Kindle Unlimited since it was doing all right on TikTok, and I'm going to try another one. But yeah, most of my books are wide.
Cool.
That's interesting.
And now that
so-
you, I was
Go,
going to say,
Sharon.
now that you are working full time as an author, how many books are you actually averaging a year? Because clearly, after 2022, you just went gangbusters, and it's just like, oh. But what's your happy space?
I'm still working that out. 2022, I think I went a bit nuts because I'd just left work and I was worried about it all.
Yeah. Totally
It's
get it.
amazing how stressed I was when I
Yeah.
did work. You think it's going to be a load off, but those first
Yeah.
couple of months were really stressful.
Very stressful. I remember
Yeah.
that feeling myself.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
put out a series of novellas that year, and I think with those included, I put out something like 10 books that year, and that was not a happy medium number for me.
No.
And then last year, it might have been 6 or 7, I think, last year. But this year, yeah, it's definitely a work in progress.
Right.
I've worked out I can write about 3,000 words a day, more than that, and my brain starts kind of melting.
Right.
But I'm still working out how much time I need between projects and how much overlap is all right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I've not published 4 books this year. And I've published 2, and I'm planning to publish another 3. But I think next year I'll probably write 4 or 5.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
4 sounds like a nice number, but I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah.
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 It
Yeah.
depends on life too, right?
Exactly.
What happening in the background. Sometimes you get a really good run and you write
Yeah.
6, and other years you're like, well, no, it's a 4-book year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also somebody like you who's donated their time to help run a conference. I mean,
Yeah.
that just eats into your writing time,
Oh,
doesn't it?
yeah.
Absolutely.
So are you writing just Monday to Friday? Or do you
Yeah,
work on the weekend?
It spills over into the weekend a bit, but generally the writing itself I'll just do during the week, and then the occasional admin task, if it doesn't get done in the week, I'll do in the weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just kudos to you,
Yeah.
Alexa, because it is such, I think it's, and thank you for sharing that you found that adjustment interesting as well, because I think so many of us have that as our ultimate goal, or, kind of the pinnacle of,
Yeah.
but it's important to remember that it's a big adjustment, right? You know, it's
Yeah, it is.
mentally as well as physically.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. If you want to get a bit woo-woo, I looked at my earnings per month for, over the trajectory in those first couple of months after I left when I was really stressed. Everything took a bit of a plunge. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that was because I was so stressed that I wasn't out there doing what I should be or what.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I totally get that. It's yeah.
I think it's such a good thing to note that life isn't going to be all perfect and roses just because you're actually living the dream, because things have to happen first, and a lot of it is mindset. It's like just getting used to the idea that you've got to be a boss to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
It's a hell of an adjustment. It takes time. I mean, we're how many years into it?
Yeah. But it's
Are we
also the
years in? I'm
pressure.
not sure we are.
I mean, I know me. I try to be totally professional, and sometimes it's like life, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So if we can just go back to TikTok just quickly, because I just have a couple more questions for you there. So do you feel like the learning TikTok and doing those things has made you a better marketer in general? Like, do you think that you've learned what your readers are looking for more, and you've become more practiced at the hooks?
I think it definitely helps. Or like when I did Kate Hall's course, like the things that you think, the emotion, she talks about the emotions that you think are going to hook them. And I think it was when you had her on here, I
Disgust,
think
wasn't disgust one of them?
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
anger. It was
confusion,
yeah.
sadness.
Yeah.
And not giving and stopping before you give them resolution. That was another part of it, wasn't it?
So I think, my brain kind of, I don't know how it feeds back into my writing, but I notice as I'm going it, if I am writing a scene, then like I kind of note, oh yes, this will probably break up nicely. And then
Oh,
I've
cool.
started
idea.
doing that as I'm getting ready for the release too. I'll go through and kind of just, go through the arc and highlight the parts that I think might make nice TikToks. So then when I get going, I can use those.
Good idea.
I do feel, and maybe this is just, but I do feel once you've written a few books and you've got some practice at the marketing, as you're writing the book, you're thinking more about the marketing, and I think it ends up the marketing is a bit better because you kind of, at least for me, I find that too. Yeah, you're setting yourself up for it. You're going, okay, I need a scene that I'm going to be able to, that's going to be the big highlight scene that's going to show something that I want to show. And you're almost kind of doing it on purpose rather than, I mean, some people might just do it accidentally, but it's just nice to know that you're doing it on purpose, and that when you get to the end of the book, you'll have something there that you can kind of use for that.
And
I
know
think
if
you're
you have
writing
those
change.
scenes.
Sorry, go Ash.
No, I was just going to say,
Alex.
when you've got those scenes, because like one of my earlier books, it was a really lovely story, but I can't really do anything with it on TikTok because there are none of those big
Oh, right.
those scenes like that, because it's
Yeah.
just it's a sweet fluffy story, but not got anything you can really market like that.
No.
And when you first start writing, you're not thinking about that.
Of course
You're
not.
not thinking about TikTok hooks, and you're not thinking about marketing. You just want to write that book.
Yeah.
And also, I would argue you shouldn't be thinking about those things
No,
because it's that's the most important thing is what you put into the book, and then
But it's natural for you now, Alexa, isn't it? Like, yeah. That's the thing.
So is it still worthwhile spending that hour a day? I mean, I know that's a $64,000 question or whatever the million question is, but I mean, obviously it is, you're doing it, but do you think, are you seeing diminishing returns now, or is it something that's still, valuable?
On the whole, I see a few less views. I don't know if that's because there's more people on TikTok or because a lot of my hooks have been on there quite a lot.
Right.
But it's still worth it for me. And every now and then one of those hooks still hits and gets, carried away with a lot of views. Or especially I've noticed for my newer releases, I don't know if that's just because, like I said, my other ones, I'll have quite a few videos out there with those hooks on, whereas the newer releases I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
But it definitely, like the last 2 books I've released have more stickability. And I think that's kind of because I've got those going.
Cool.
And for me, I think like I've tried a lot of marketing things and I haven't done super well with a lot of them. So it's a way I know that even if it's not high numbers all the time, consistently sells books for me. So it's worth it for that reason, because everything else I've tried has been a bit hit and miss for me.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you repurpose your content constantly. You'll put it back up with another background, or you just put it on your other
Yeah.
site. So you just completely, constantly doing that.
Yeah. I try to I've got a wee spreadsheet to make sure I'm not posting the same book too often, but I do notice particular hooks or scenes seem to work better. So I'll post those more, but it's kind of a bit of a balancing game, trying to use the better ones but not use them so often that they lose all their power.
Yeah.
So with the spreadsheet, are you working to sort of like a system of a particular book a month or a week or around a new release? How do you work it out?
A bit of both, and it's one of those things that I'm tweaking all of the time as well. But when I have a new release, I usually don't do anything, or I haven't for the last couple done anything for the first week on TikTok, just to see kind of what it will do without that. And then I'll post once or twice a day basically through until so like the hockey release I had come out about 3 weeks ago. I think I must have had about 30 or 35 hooks I wrote up for that while I was going through the release stuff. And I've just been cycling through all of those. I think I've got about 4 left to share. And then once I have, I'll go back and see which ones did the best. And then I'll just kind of add those into my ongoing rotation. And I just had one of my, I said I have a bunch of accounts. One of the ones that I kind of don't use that often, but still does all right. I've just been using that for those. So it hasn't been, interfering with anything else.
Yeah.
But for my main accounts, I'll usually work through a series. So I might post a couple of days on one book and then work through that series. Yeah. And there was another question there. I think I've missed one.
No, that was good. I'm just entranced by your organisation because I'm a planner girl. So talk me through. So you've got your spreadsheet. What other tools do you use? Are you a spreadsheet queen for your actual business organisation stuff? Just including TikTok, but beyond that.
Mostly spreadsheets. Actually, my husband is the spreadsheet guru, so I think I kind of do a lot of it because he's all about the spreadsheets and it carries on. Yeah, other than that, I use OneNote a bit. That's useful for all the, kind of having everything about a book in one place. But mostly, spreadsheets. I've started doing that for my books as well, keeping a track of the places, characters and everything in those, because otherwise it's really hard if you're 6 books into a series and you forgot what colour that person's hair is or something.
Oh my gosh.
Or everybody's got the same. Yeah, right. Yeah. The dog's colour changes from book 1 to book 6.
Yeah.
I even find, because I'm writing fantasy, the rules, like I've set up, this group can't do that, and then I forget that, and then they start, so it's all a mess. So can I just ask, so you're making up these 35 hooks for your book. How do you go about that? Are you just brainstorming? Do they just come easily, or is there a technique to it, or what do you do?
Some of them, for me, come reasonably easily now, I think just because I've had the practice. But I'm quite methodical in it, in that I'll sit there with it in my e-reader or my phone or whatever and just go through. And it's kind of, if I find those bits of dialogue mostly that look like they'll get someone interested, and then if there's not an obvious kind of hooking thing in the scene, it's kind of just thinking of something that you can put to lead into that dialogue.
Yeah.
And so you're not like pulling, like you're not worried, like this was something Kate talked to us about, like not being worried that it's word for word exactly as it is in the book. You can kind of change it a little to make it.
I try to keep it as close as possible, but sometimes changing it a little bit, like sometimes people won't understand if you've got, names or phrases or something that don't make sense outside of the context of the book. So I feel like as long as it's basically the same thing and people aren't going to feel robbed when they get into the book, then it's fine.
And how many people would remember though, right? The TikTok,
exactly.
and then go back and say, well, did you know?
Yeah.
There might be some people, I feel.
Well, there were definitely
There's always
someone,
some
right? We
people.
know that.
Someone.
So just, I don't know if you guys are happy with this, but I've just got one more question around TikTok, and then we'll just move on to this new genre that you've moved into, which I am completely curious about, which you have mentioned earlier. So are there any overall lessons about marketing or anything like that you feel that you've gotten from TikTok that you could give our listeners?
I think, I'm sure heaps of people say this, but I think a lot of it is like almost like, at the RWNZ conference, we talked I did Sasha Black's Pros in the Market, and a lot of that was talking about kind of baking it into your book. And I think it's just if you go through and you're like trying to make sure you've got those scenes in there that hit certain emotional notes, almost it's probably not a quick fix answer, but it's a really handy one for moving forward anyway.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think any marketing tips? Sorry. Thinking.
But you're right about baking it into the book. I think that becomes natural the more books you write. But to start with, I think you do need to make an effort to put those real emotive
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
Check
in
that
there.
you've got them.
That'll be
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
for marketing. You know, like I have to pull out scenes to give to the people that are marketing for me, and it's like, oh, I can never. I'm just like, oh, where are they? You know, like I can
Yeah.
never find them. But I think as you go on, you've got to. Really
But it's not
think
just
about
for marketing, it's also for the readers. They want that, you know, of romance, they want that meet cute. They want the, you know, the
Yep.
often they want the grovel, and often, you know, they want the falling in love stuff, you know, and to be honest, that's what they're reading for. You know, the rest of it, they don't necessarily need a giant scene on going fly fishing. So I think
being aware what the reader wants. That's
Yeah,
I think-
getting
Yeah.
those high impact and conflicts, you know, that we have come to expect from our reading.
I think the other thing I've picked up is probably the same, like whatever marketing you're doing, and that's just like stalking in the most polite way possible the people that are doing well and what they're doing, and
Yeah.
like similar things you can do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And like not directly copying, but you can get a lot of inspiration from other people.
Absolutely.
Well, that's
Yep.
all page flips, isn't it, really? Somebody
Yeah.
did it once and then that's like, oh, this is cool, let's all do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah, I've sat down and gone through the bestseller charts a couple of times, and just if I don't know a name from somewhere, you know, I go, oh, that's probably a TikTok author, and can I go and look them up and see what they're doing and how they got there?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a good tip on how to find them, actually.
Yeah.
because How do
Yeah.
you find people who are doing
lot of the
well on
ones I,
TikTok necessarily?
I've got my spreadsheet, so we've ascertained I'm a bit of a spreadsheet nerd, and I look at the top 10 on Amazon every day, and every now and then you get a new one pop in there and you think, I've never heard of them, and yeah, often I find that's one that's blown
Yeah.
up on TikTok.
And sometimes
cool.
I'll even have, as seen on BookTop, actually in the book description as well, like a hit on TikTok, which
Yeah.
is what I'd totally be doing as well if I
For sure.
if I had
It blew
that.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
If I did it.
that's a really good tip.
Yeah.
I like that, Alexa. That's good.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so you vaguely mentioned it earlier. Oh, no, you mentioned it earlier. Was that you had this crazy against all logical advice decision to do a passion project into historical romance, which is awesome. And you've got it's a beautiful cover, and it's a slightly different pen name. So can you just tell us why on earth you crazy child decided to go into historical romance and how that's gone?
Well, I didn't really, it's a funny story. I didn't really set out to do historical necessarily. I finished 2 series at the end of last year, and I needed something a bit different. I don't know, a bit of a palette cleanser.
Yeah.
And I went and I kind of brainstormed all the fun ideas I could think of and wrote blurbs for 6 of them. And then I did that thing that we're all told you should never do. And I took all my blurbs around all my friends and family members and asked which story they wanted.
Yeah.
And they picked the Regency historical. So I wrote that. I did a lot of research actually. It was kind of a bit off the cuff how I decided I was going to do that one. But once I'd set on it, I did quite a lot of research. I went through the bestseller charts and looked at what the covers were doing well and things like that, and used those to try and, well, actually I used that to find a cover designer. I went through, and stalked on the interior where they say the cover designer often inside the look inside. And but yeah, writing that was interesting. I'm not much for research most of the time. And to be honest, I still probably could have done a lot more research, but it was the most I've done when writing a book. But it was a lot of fun.
Good.
And it was,
Do you
it was
read
something.
Regency romance? Like, is it a genre that's familiar to you? Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't read a ton of it recently, but growing up, it was almost completely, it was all Regency romance. Going through uni, Regencies, the Highlanders,
Yeah.
time travel romance.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. And so, And so you did the research into the actual what was the covers and what was selling and stuff, and then you just wrote the book. Did it come out easily, or did it?
It came out pretty well because I had that blurb to begin with, so I kind of knew what I wanted the story to be.
Yeah.
And then I just used my usual kind of planning structure, I guess. The story came out reasonably well. Yeah, I just had to pause every now and then to look up things like, did they have matches in, this year? Or
Welcome to my life.
And did they?
Was that word used in those days? Did they use that word?
I didn't realize how much that was a thing.
Yeah.
The editor, the amount of phrases that came back with, this phrase wasn't used until. But that was another thing I think I did really well. There was an editor who was willing to ping me on all of those things.
Yeah.
And I've just finished writing the second one, and I was so proud of myself because I'd made a note of all, things. And every time I used a phrase I thought might not be that old, I looked it up, but I still missed a few. She still managed to find plenty of things to
even just things like the United Kingdom, like it was England, not United Kingdom, just so many little things.
Wedding dresses weren't traditionally white, and in the period I was writing that one.
What color were
crazy?
they?
Pink, blue,
whatever, any color but white, really.
Oh, interesting.
It was Queen Victoria, wasn't it, that brought on the white wedding dress?
Oh,
And
Christmas.
Things you learn. And so what marketing did you do for that one? Did you do marketing? Like, did you think this? I vaguely remember talking to you and you were like, oh, I'm just going to throw it up. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But like, I don't think you had high expectations for it, did you? Because
I didn't have high expectations for it because it was it wasn't anything I'd done before. And my husband's going to be a bit smug about this, but he said, Bridgeton's doing so well. You can, put it up around the same time. And because it's in a Regency book, it'll just take off. And I went, that's not how it works. But I did put it up around the same time as Bridgeton. And I released it at 99 cents and did a whole lot of newsletter promos for the first 5 days. And then I had a bunch of TikTok hooks that I started after those 5 days, and that was kind of and I had some Facebook ads. But the Facebook ads actually worked on that. I've tried Facebook ads before, but they've never really done much for me. But I don't know if it was just because I'd picked a better audience or because there's lots of historical authors on there or what. But that actually worked for me as well.
And so did you, and just to clarify, you put it up under a separate pen so it wasn't a crossover or you weren't confusing your existing contemporary romance audience?
No, it's up as Jane Rivers, and I did send my reviewer teams an email just saying, if you also read historical and want to go and do a review for this book, you can go and I put it on Book Sprout so they'd have to go and sign up there rather than getting it directly from me. But I thought there might be some crossover, and I did get a few, but I didn't send it out to any of my other newsletters or anything on the whole because I didn't want that mixed up.
Exactly, yeah.
And so how did it go? This is what I want you to tell us.
It went very well. It went much better than any of my other books.
It's just amazing, isn't it? So incredible.
So it started off at 99 cents, for that first release week? Was that it?
Yeah.
Just to get it some traction, give it a boost?
Yeah.
And wide or KO?
Kindle Unlimited.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was trying to make it as easy for myself as possible.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, this is your palate cleanser, right? You weren't expecting it necessarily to...
And it's a bigger book, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about 85,000 words, I think.
Yeah. So that's pretty good for page reads, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not bad for page reads. Yeah.
Would you describe it? What's the spice level as you describe it? Would it be sort of medium, low?
Yeah, on my ratings, it's probably about a 3. I know it's hard to tell because people's vary, but it's got
very much.
It's got on-page sex, but it's like not super explicit.
Right.
But yeah, that first week it did reasonably well, and then I don't know if it was the TikTok, the Facebook ads, or a combination, but it just kept going up, and it got to I think 170 in the Amazon store.
Wow,
which was really amazing for me. I think my next highest had been about 660 or something. So,
oh my god,
yeah, that was pretty amazing.
So I think that's just the velocity, right? It's just that constant, that velocity of sales, and Amazon responds, right? And then shows it to more people.
So what do you have any insights into what was different about this book for you? Like what was it, Bridgerton, or is there something else that
It did have the Bridgeton vibes, but it was very much like a lot of it happened in probably a third of it happened in London and 2/3 happened in a more country setting. So it didn't quite have that kind of London town thing going on that Bridgerton has. It might be partly the timing with that, because the Bridgerton hype would have just been slightly ramping up when I think I put it out about 2 or 3 weeks before Bridgerton season 3 released. I don't know if it was just that, or I think I got a really nice cover for it. And I think the heroine really resonated with people. It's got probably a bit of a it's not got a Pride and Prejudice feel, but he has a bit of a Mr. Darcy vibe, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
And I think she's just a very relatable heroine, and that might snag people in as well on the first, chapter or whatever.
Yeah.
Inside.
So what did you do with this new audience you were building? I'm assuming you set up a new newsletter list for this pen name for your Regency readers. What did you do with those people? Because at that point you didn't have another book to give them, or so. What did you do?
She
I had a little
recommended
bit of
mine, of course.
I had a little bit of a panic because I wasn't expecting it to do all that
I
much.
can imagine.
And then I
Good
went, oh
panic,
well, I enjoyed writing it and it's done well, so I guess I'm going to be writing more of those.
Another one of those.
I'm Clifton Strength's #1 futuristic. I had my idea of what the next 2 years was going to look like, and suddenly I had to reevaluate that.
Yeah.
Actually, I ended up doing a couple of coaching calls to talk things through, and I've worked it in now. I've turned that book into a series. I'd initially planned 3 books, but I've just finished writing the second, and there's another character that's turned up, so it might be 4. We'll see. And I've got a plan for another Regency series, but I'll see how the second book goes, because it's hard to know if something's going to be a like a one-off hit, or if it's going to pick up momentum.
But you've got a nice big audience there, and I'm assuming that you've got a good number on your newsletter list. So, you're going to start off with a whole lot more than you did first time round, right?
Yeah, I have the newsletter. I had that set up from the beginning, which was handy, just in case, I'm very attached to my newsletter. So I wanted to have that all set up, even though I wasn't necessarily expecting it to do a lot.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it's also a good lesson. Just shows that you're using your knowledge, but you weren't using your current audience to get that. So it just shows that you can do it with one book.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It's intriguing. I do also think though that you're doing it with one book, but you've also got a lot of experience. So I think that for people just starting out, maybe it happens sometimes, but it's the experience that Alexa has that she's used to create the book. First off, create a book that people will enjoy reading, but also just the setting up the newsletter.
She's doing everything right.
I think it depends what people want to do with their first book as well. Like the idea for that story was a passion idea for me, when I wrote up all the blurbs, but then I did go and do all the research and things, and I don't mind doing that because I'm #2 learner and I like doing the research. But some people might not want to do that, and that's cool too. That's just, it depends what you want to do, right?
Yeah.
I think you've got to find your processes, right? What works for you.
Yeah.
At what point did you or have you put the price up? And I'm assuming, and what, like roughly, would you say it's 50-50 sales versus KU reads, or is it more a KU read heavy?
I put the price up after 5 or 6 days, I think, and it's definitely KU heavy. I couldn't tell you the percent off the top of my head, but I imagine it's quite a lot. Hang on, I'm just seeing if I can.
It's
I'm
okay.
the same with mine. My KU's where I get mine from.
Yeah.
And when you've got an 85,000 word book, that's good, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it has sold a few more paperbacks than I expected it to as well. Like not a heap, but more than my other. Maybe that's because it's got a pretty cover.
Pretty cover,
It's amazing what a pretty cover does.
A lot of older readers like to have an actual book too.
Yeah.
They really do.
Do you notice a difference, actually? That's a good point. Do you notice a difference in the readership between the historical romance and the other books that you have? Like, have you noticed?
Age-wise, do you mean?
Or even just in general? Like, are they?
I haven't yet, but I probably haven't got a really good feel for my Regency audience yet, so hard to say.
Yeah.
But also the fact that it worked on TikTok as well, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just
When I
shows.
started training up the account for that, I wasn't quite sure what to look at because like there are a few people on there, but not a heap. But I found as many Regency ones as I could find, or historical in general, historical romance. And then I started looking up like this. My books are Marriage of Convenience, and the kind of feelings you get from that are the same, whether it's that or like a contemporary billionaire. So I
Yeah.
looked up, keywords like marriage of convenience instead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That seemed
Good
to
call.
have
That's
right.
smart.
Mm.
Yeah.
real smart.
Yeah, because there is hard sometimes finding the right kind of, like you say,
Yep.
if the genre is not on TikTok or other social media, looking out that marriage convenience is a smart way to do it. Like that similar feeling that the reader is wanting to get out of that
Yeah.
book is a brilliant way to do it. That's smart.
Mm.
Smart. But I knew that you were smart anyway, so that doesn't
Yeah.
surprise me.
Absolutely smart.
Are there any lessons that you've learned? Anything that you think maybe you did kind of wrong or that you would do differently next time?
I think having a plan for, keeping in mind the fact that things can go well would be smart. Or it's hard to know because it was just it was a bit of a whirlwind for me because it did take off a lot more than any of my books are generally quite slow burns, and then a lot of them didn't take off and do much of anything until ages after they were published. I think doing that research up front was really good. And I think I probably would have been well placed to have some kind of short story or something like that to send them off to, because was it like Shah said before, someone said before, it finished and then I kind of didn't have anywhere to go.
Yeah,
from
no
there.
pre-order or anything for them to go to.
Yeah, I rushed and I got a cover design up for the next one as quick as I could, but that took, you've got to wait for the designer to
course.
Yeah,
agree
of
before you do
course.
that, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a learning process because you didn't think it was going to happen, did you?
No.
So, and then boom, it did.
But in
so.
some ways, again, getting a little woo-woo here, but in some ways, maybe without having that pressure on yourself of having that second cover already booked or that other pre-order, maybe that released you to just write what you loved, within that book and put your heart and soul into that and just really relish that palate cleanser for yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Instead of giving you the pressure of, okay, well, this is another series and another pen name,
Yeah, you can kind of do what you want without that pressure.
And did you put that second one up for pre-order?
Yes. Yeah.
And have you got some
I
pre-orders
have
already?
got some, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been
Cool.
I've been debating whether to do the same thing with the release for that one as I did for the first one and have it at 99 cents or put it up at full, but I haven't quite figured out what I'm up to yet. It's on at full price for pre-order.
I'm sure you will work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My personal opinion is no.
Yeah, not if you've got it up for pre-order or not. Yeah, whatever your price is. You don't want to reduce it.
If they're
no,
already
not after.
pre-ordering at that price,
Yeah.
You can always drop the first book down again.
Yeah, true.
As a lead-in. Yeah.
Anyway.
Nice. Well done.
That's just our opinion. So that's awesome. And I just want to so you've done other passion projects that haven't gone as well. We're not going to mention anything much about them, but just so people don't think that that it is possible to have other ones that don't necessarily go as well. And it's almost just it was the right writing at the right time with maybe the Bridgeton effect. Like there was other
at the right time.
Marketing. Like it's just there was a bit of a zeitgeist almost involved in that, and it doesn't mean you're bad or wrong if you've got a passion project that doesn't suddenly take off and do better than all your other books.
Because it might
It's
take off
just-
further down the track. You don't actually know when it's going to hit that wave, right?
And you still have to do some work regardless. Yeah.
So
Yes, and it's all right to do a bit of genre hopping sometimes. I'm still trying to convince myself of that, but different things I've written.
well, it's worked for you, right? Like we do say, and that's kind of why I was hassling
The
you when
trouble
you
is not committing yourself to everything.
Exactly. I think sometimes reining that in a bit.
Mm.
I think what you did was amazing, and you found something else that you can do that you love as well. And I think it's quite nice to have something else on the go.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So just quickly, we're going to talk a little bit about conference. So you were one of the conference organizers for the Romance Writers of New Zealand. So did you what can you give us as a piece of advice either for organizing conferences or just about attending conferences in general? Like what would you say to people?
for a planning one, so I was the speaker liaison, which basically meant, getting in touch with the speakers, asking if they wanted to come, or managing the expressions of interest we had and things like that. And the main thing I would say there, or, besides the general assumed be nice and polite and professional to everyone, is have backup options up your sleeve, even if you don't hope you won't need them. We had quite a few speakers, that a lot of them had health issues come up or family life issues come up, and they just couldn't be there for one reason or another that was completely, beyond their control. So, we used the backup, and then I think we used another backup, a couple more, and then we had a couple of very lovely people like Wendy speaking, slot into a panel near the end, and we still had one speaker up our sleeve just in case anything went wrong on the weekend. And in terms of the conference experience itself, I think it depends. I'm very introverted, so I went through the schedule ahead of time and kind of looked at when I could pop away to my room for 5 or 10 minutes to get a bit of breathing space. I think it's just looking at what's happening and what your needs are and trying to figure out how you can accommodate them.
Know yourself, when you go into that sort of environment.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially as writers, because we spend so much time on our own. It's a big overwhelm.
And
even for someone who's an extrovert like me.
So I want you to quickly, because we had Becca Syme at the conference, and I learned a lot about the other spa girls and their traits, because
you had to go there, we need to
traits.
Their personality.
Again, I will talk about this for the rest of our lives now.
We are. It's going to be a thing now, Wendy. So can you just tell us your top 5, and is there anything that you kind of learnt from Becca about what you need to do? You based on those ones that is
top 5 Clifton strengths, just for anybody that is not
sorry, I'm assuming knowledge here.
Some people just assume that everybody knows and cares.
My top 5 are futuristic, learner, achiever, focus, and discipline. And I came home and made my husband do it too. And he's number 3, positivity, which I would never have guessed, but which when I heard it didn't surprise me. Because he's a very good cheerleader.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
Learnings. I don't think I got any specific that I took away kind of for my particular combination as such, but from Becca's stuff, the thing that really stuck with me was her talking about the future and putting happiness off into the future, and how, we all tend to do that. And I had a relook at my work schedule and the hours per day, and kind of rejigged what I'm doing each day, because she asked the question, could you do what you're doing today for the next 20 or 30 years? And that made me feel a little bit tired. So,
I was the same. I was like, I re-looked at what I was doing and how I was doing it, and I was,
It's important to do that, I think, on a regular basis. Because, we kind of load ourselves up, I think. You've got an hour spare, and you think, well, what can I do for my job in that hour, instead of thinking, what can I do for me?
And putting your laptop down at night and stuff. It's important,
especially with discipline, achiever, and focus in your top 5. Alexa, that must be I don't know,
a war of the worlds.
I like checklists, and I like doing things, and I've taken most of this week off, and it's been really nice, but it's also every day I'm like, I could just do a little bit of this, and it's not really work. I like it.
That was the one thing that we had with Achiever that Becca talked about, is like the need to mark stuff off to actually finish things is quite a big deal for Achievers. And Wendy's an Achiever as well.
And I don't have it.
And that was another.
You don't have it, Sharon? And yours?
No, not at all. So you don't.
And who likes ticking things off more than me?
I love it as well.
But it's not. It's just. I mean, you probably have other stuff, right? Like that. But it's almost like a compulsive thing. Like Wendy was talking about it in a way that can actually be a negative sometimes. Do you ever feel like it's a negative, Alexa, or is it always just an awesome thing and you love it?
No, it's sometimes definitely a negative. Like, in order to help me feel better about this time off, I had to come up with a list of, even some of it's just like things I could cook because I like cooking, and I've crossed off the ones I've done, or a few odd jobs around the house, because it makes me feel better if I'm crossing things off, regardless of whether or not it's a big deal.
So that's just about knowing yourself, right? Which is what we always say: know yourself and know what is important to you, and keep going. So I think maybe we're kind of coming towards
Yeah,
the end
at
of the
the end.
interview. I just
Yeah.
wondered if there's anything that you'd like to say, any sort of last piece of advice for our listeners that you know, someone who's just starting out maybe and is thinking, oh my gosh, this is a lot, or whatever. Just a piece of advice that you would like to give people.
I think knowing what you like to write and why you want to write it is like before you get off and get carried off on all these, things you can do and should do in quotation marks or, whatever. It's that knowing yourself and knowing what your goals are and what you want, and like not letting yourself get carried off by what everyone else thinks you should be doing or what you should want or that kind of thing, which is possibly not a particularly useful implementation piece of advice, but
No, I think it's very true. I think there's a lot of
Yeah.
noise out there where people are telling you what you should be doing, and this is the one way forward, and this is how you can be successful. So it's important to know what you want out of
Everyone's
it.
processes are different.
I know, and especially when you talk about doing a passion project as a palate cleanser, but you actually did the research as well. So it's not just a matter of like jumping in boots and all and I'll just write whatever and that'll be that. There's still a process to go through, and
There's
I
no
commend you
wrong
for
way, right? There's no wrong way, and we learn from the things that don't work and move on. It doesn't mean that's you're learning all the time.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So if someone wants to come and find you, where can they find you, Alexa?
My website's probably the best place, elixiraviz.com. I'm hoping to get that upgraded at some point because it's a bit old, but I'm working on it.
That's how we all. Yeah. Okay, so find you at the website. Where can we be found?
We can be found at spagirlspodcast.com. Our website probably needs upgrading too, but I can't face it, so there it is.
It's all good.
It does the job, and sometimes you just got to do the job.
Thank you to all our Patreon followers.
And thank you.
You guys are awesome.
Yeah.
And we've been doing a bit of coaching this month. And we've been,
lots.
And it's kind of fun. So we like doing it. So if you want to get a bit of coaching from us, come on in. The water's lovely.
The
And
water's warm.
join us. But otherwise, thank you to everyone who's listened to this episode. I hope you've listened closely to everything Alexa has to say, because she's very smart. But we will be back again at the same time next week, or probably a different time, to be fair, because we will put it up at different times on a Wednesday. We'll be back next week, is my point. But for now,
I wondered what it was.
Bye.
Bye.
Be well. Bye.